Well, hi everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Lanzarote News and Weather. I'm Mike from Lanzarote Information, and we produce these bulletins every Saturday morning for you. In the next 20 minutes or so, I'll be bringing you up to date with all of the island's news. I'll be telling you about the weather this week and what the forecast is for next week. We'll be doing a useful Spanish phrase sometime in the middle, and stay tuned until the end for 3 things you could be doing on the island if you're here over the next 7 days or so. So let's talk about the weather first of all. The short answer is pretty damn good, especially after the dire winter we've had. We really have not had a very good winter this year. But the last weekend was absolutely spectacular. Beautiful blue skies, almost no wind, and warm and sunny. During the week it's got a little bit windier, but then we're moving into the trade wind season, so that's probably quite normal. But it's been good. Midday temperatures have been in the sort of mid to high 20s. We've had a few white fluffy clouds around, as I say, a bit of wind, but no big issues, nothing to worry about. And it looks like next week is going to be exactly the same. For sure, the beaches over the last week or so have been extremely busy, which suggests that the weather is definitely beach weather here currently. So let's move on with the news now. And the first story is a bit of a drama one, and it happened on Thursday this week at Open Mall in Arrecife, which, as you probably know, is the largest shopping centre on the island. And they had a fire and had to evacuate everybody out of the building. And we have some friends who were there, or several sets of friends who were there, and told us all about it, and that it was all a bit scary and they saw a lot of smoke. The news is still quite sketchy about exactly what happened and what damage has been caused. But what we do know is that the fire originated in an electrical distribution room there and created a lot of smoke. The fire service were able to get the fire very quickly under control, and obviously the building was evacuated beforehand, and I gather there's a bit of smoke damage in some of the shops, but nothing too serious. My guess is that the place will just get going and reopen almost immediately, but I don't know that for sure yet. Now, next up, the 2 new cruise terminals in Arrecife opened this week, and there's one at Puerto Neos and one at Puerto de los Marmeles. And these 2 terminals will now enable passengers in future to embark and disembark on the ships, because they have all the usual cruise ship facilities like security scanners, a passport control, and a luggage handling system. But above all, they just provide a nicer place for people getting on and off ships that they'll be able to go through, where there will be shops and interesting things for them to see and do. I really like the buildings. They're properly Lanzarote. They're low rise, they're white buildings. One has cactus gardens around it, which are beautifully planted, and they just have a nice feel to them. So I think that's a big improvement to the cruise passenger experience in the port of Arrecife. And while we're talking about cruise ships, the mayor of Yaiza, which of course includes Playa Blanca, Oscar Noda, has announced that he's talking to 6 cruise lines about getting cruise ships into the port of Playa Blanca. Now remember that he's talking to the boutique, high-class, more expensive cruise lines that have ships that carry between 500 and 700 passengers. But this seems to be his pet project, and he's working hard at it. And as I say, he's having discussions with 6 cruise lines currently. We don't have any information yet about which ones they are, when it's likely to start, but my best guess would be perhaps late 2026 or even early 2027, just given the amount of forward planning cruise ships have to do before they change their itineraries. Now, while we're talking about this, I did have one Playa Blanca resident contact me last week to say, this is terrible news, and Playa Blanca is going to be completely overrun with cruise tourists. And I just wanted to put his mind and your minds at rest, because that simply isn't the case. First of all, as I said, we're talking about cruise ships that carry between 500 and 700 passengers. And I've done a bit of research into this, and I've got some numbers that I'm going to read off my notebook here. But even if you take the largest that can get in there that carries 700 passengers, typically of those 700 passengers, about 10% will stay on board the ship because a lot of people, and I know this from my own cruising experience, actually like being on the ship when there are very few other people there. They can use the spa in comfort, they get the pool to themselves and all that kind of stuff. So that's 70 people who will stay on ship. Another percentage will go on excursions, and these are excursions where they'll be picked up in coaches and taken to places like Timanfaya and Jamios del Agua and a trip to Arrecife, or whatever those excursions are that the cruise line is selling. Typically out of 700, 230 people will do that. And then there's another much smaller percentage of people who will hire a car and just go driving around the island themselves. In this case, the number would be around 35. So out of 700 people on a cruise ship, only about 365, just over half, will just wander ashore to see what's ashore wherever they are docked. So 365 people, you are not going to notice them in Playa Blanca. It's a tiny percentage of the overall number of tourists that are there at any given time. So relax. Now, the next story is an astonishing one, really. The Spanish government announced that they have requested Airbnb to remove 66,000 listings of properties for holiday letting on their website. And they haven't gone into any detail about what areas of Spain that these apply to, so I have no idea how many of them are in the Canaries or Lanzarote, but it's an astonishing number. And we also don't know the specific percentages of reasons. I'd like to know how many were taken off for this reason, how many were taken off for that reason. All we've got is a sort of fairly bland that they either do not have a Vivienda Vacacional license, or they weren't displaying it, or they aren't complying with local regulations in some other way. But it's quite a big number, 66,000. So it shows that the government here is quite serious now about reducing the number of illegal holiday lets throughout the country. Great news for those who hire cars here or who drive gasoline or diesel powered cars. The price of fuel has come down here again quite dramatically over the last year. I'm just going to pick up my notes and read them. They are now 20% lower than they were a year ago. And the average price of gasoline on the island is €1.11 a litre, and diesel is at $1.10 per litre. So great news for car drivers and, as I say, people who hire gasoline or diesel cars on the island. Now let's do your useful Spanish phrase of the week, and it's a really, really simple one again, but it's a really, really useful one. Now imagine you're, in a shop ordering something, or you're in a restaurant and you want to know what time they're opening tomorrow. The phrase is so simple, but it's one a lot of people don't know, and it's a qué hora. So when you're asking it as a question, it's a qué hora. Hora, you don't pronounce the H in Spanish, but the rest of it is really, really straightforward. And it literally means at what hour. So, a qué hora sería abierto mañana? So at what time will you be open tomorrow? Or, when someone says to you, we'll drop it off at your house tomorrow morning, you can say, a qué hora? And they'll tell you what time roughly they're expected to get there. Now, I love this little story. There is now a water bus service being run by Líneas Romero in Playa Blanca, and it runs from the ferry port in Playa Blanca, the ferry and fishing port, and it goes along the coast to Marina Rubicon. So it's a great way for those of you who stay at one end of Playa Blanca or the other to get from one end to the other. And we've had this service in Puerto del Carmen for ages, and people use that one way and then walk back along the promenade the other way. So you could do the same, or if you have more limited mobility, you could use it in both directions. There are 3 ferries each day, so they're reasonably well spread out, so you could go to one part in the morning and come back in the afternoon. Prices are €18 return for adults and €12 return for kids. Now, I had a couple contact me this week who had the start of their holiday spoiled, and I'll tell you the story. They booked a hire car here with one of the big multinational hire companies, and they got it for what they thought was a very reasonable, and it is a very reasonable, €98 for a week. It was only a small car. But as so many of us do, they didn't read the small print. And when they arrived at the desk to pick up their car, they found out that they either had to pay another €105 to get proper insurance on it, or the car hire company were going to take €2,500 a hold on their credit card. And they didn't have the credit limit to do that. So they had to stump up the extra €105, basically more than doubling the cost of what they thought was their great value car hire. Now, this really irritates me because it spoils the start of someone's holiday. Imagine the situation where you're super excited, you've got off the aircraft, you're into the warm air, you're looking forward to picking up your hire car and driving to your accommodation, and the first thing that happens is that you end up paying double the price you were expecting to pay. And of course that's then a loss of that money that could have been spent elsewhere from their holiday spends. But the message, of course, is to read the small print before you book anything. You know, where it says you accept our terms, we all click that little box. How many of us scroll through on our phone to read what it actually says? But certainly you should do that when you're looking at something that is 100 or hundreds of euros. Now, I have a vested interest in telling you this story because we offer a car hire service. We arrange around 1,300 hires a year for people, and we've been doing it since 2008. If you're interested in a car hire service where everything is transparent, you don't pay a cent more than you've been quoted, then have a look in the description below and you'll see a link that will send a form to me, and I'll get back to you very quickly with your quotation for car hire. Just note, we only do airport to airport hires. Right, we should get back to the news, and there was a protest march last weekend organised by the same group that organised the two last year. There was one in, I think it was April, and one in October. Well, this one took place in May, and it was last Sunday, and the marchers went from the kiosk in Arrecife to the Cabildo, the Parliament building, where they presented their manifesto. Now, this time there were around 2,000 people marching, and the organisers were at pains to point out that these marches are not against tourism or tourists. They are against the basic necessities of life and the sustainability of the island, and lots of different things they've got in their manifesto, and partly about trying to reduce the overall level of tourism here. And in summary, what their message is, they said the organisers say that it is not a question of rejecting tourism as an economic engine, but of demanding a profound transformation that prioritises social welfare and sustainability. I get frustrated with particularly the UK press, who turn this into anti-tourism protests, and they always make it all about the Brits. So it's Spain doesn't want British tourists anymore. It's not about the Brits. It's not about any particular group of tourists that we welcome to the country. It's about having too many of them. And in that respect, I have some sympathy. I have a lot of sympathy actually for the protesters, because I think we do have too many tourists here in Lanzarote. The island felt right when it was at about 3 million. We're now up to 3.4 million. And unless we dramatically improve the infrastructure, that's the water supply, the electricity supply, the airport and all the road systems and everything that goes with that, it really does make life quite difficult here. So we either need to put up and shut up and increase all that spending on infrastructure so that we can cope with more and more people, or we need to back it off a little bit. Not dramatically. We're not talking about, you know, turning away half our tourism. We're probably talking about 10%. But if we can do that, I think not only will life be better on the island, but the people coming here will have a better time and a better experience of it. So I hope that's what our government are working on at the moment. And finally in the news, Ironman took place last weekend. It's been running every year since 1992, apart from obviously during the pandemic. And it went off really, really well. It was a Lanzarote classic with quite a lot of wind on the bike. It got very, very hot in the afternoon for the marathon, but everyone got through safely and a good time was had by all. Dylan Magnien, I apologise if I butchered that, won the men's event. He's from France, and the women's event was won by Lucy Charles Barclay from the UK. So that's the news, and as promised, here are 3 things you could be doing if you're on the island over the next 7 days. And the first of them takes place on Saturday the 24th. If you're watching this on Saturday, that means this evening or this afternoon. And this is the Emech Music Festival. Now, Julie and I are going along to that. I'm really looking forward to it. It's an electronic dance festival, and it's taking place at Castillo San Jose in Arrecife. And it kicks off at 3 in the afternoon and goes on until around midnight. And they've got some really top DJs coming along to spin the discs at the event. There's even an after party at midnight. I don't think we'll make that, but we'll see how it goes. Next up, on Monday the 26th, you can see in English the film Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning. That's Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible franchise, of course. And that's playing in English at Dayland. It's also on Thursday the 29th. So that's Saturday the 24th and Thursday the 29th at the cinema in Dayland. But there seem to be loads and loads of English movies playing this week, both in Dayland and at the cinema in Arrecife. And they include Lilo and Stitch. Maybe you say that Lilo in English, Lilo and Stitch. There is also Final Destination Bloodlines, Thunderbolts, and In the Lost Lands. I don't know any of these other films, but there's a lot of English language movies going on next week. If you're interested in any of those, go to lanzaroteinformation.co.uk, press the What's On button, and you can scroll through by day and see what's on where. And finally, next Friday the 30th is Dia de Canarias, and it's the day Canarians celebrate the opening of the Canary Islands as an autonomous region of Spain. So we had up for the first time our own parliament based initially in Santa Cruz in Tenerife. Dia de Canarias is a magical day here. Obviously it's a public holiday, but it's the day where people celebrate what it means to be a Canarian. And you'll find that there are events going on everywhere on the island. Every town, every village will have something going on to celebrate the day. Now, if you go to our Facebook page, Lanzarote Information, just search for Lanzarote Information within Facebook, you'll find that Susanna has put an album of all the events in there. So once you get to our page, click photos and then albums, and you'll see the most recent one is the Dia de Canarias album, and there's loads and loads of stuff in there. So that's it for this week. Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do so. If you've liked the video, please give us a like. It really does help us. And if you've got any questions or comments or stuff you either agree with or disagree with, put them in below. I read every single one of them and I'm always happy to answer your questions and queries. And remember, we produce a video on a Tuesday, a Thursday, and this one every Saturday as well. So if you're a Lanzarote lover, you're really into the island, this is the channel to be watching. Thank you so much and bye for now, everyone. Bye.